Did you guys meet in Michigan while
We
you were?
did.
Okay.
Yes, I moved from California when I was 13 with my parents, and then I met Evan a few years later.
And were you weren't partnered right away?
No, we were friends first.
We actually competed against each other with different partners.
Oh.
We had the same coach, and then we kind of had this like serendipitous career event that kind of brought us together. And fate was just working in our advantage, if you will. And yeah, we've been skating together 15 years now.
Imagine dedicating 15 years of your life to something. Not 15 years of showing up and going through the motions, but 15 years of bleeding for it, sacrificing for it, building your entire identity around it. Now imagine doing all of that alongside the person you love, the person you eventually marry, and then standing on the biggest stage in the world and delivering the performance of a lifetime only to watch a single judge hand that moment to someone else. That is not a hypothetical. That is the story of Madison Chock and Evan Bates. And right now, the figure skating world is still processing what their absence from the World Championships in Prague actually means. Because when two names disappear from an entry list, it is easy to assume injury or exhaustion. But this situation is something far more layered than that. And once you understand the full picture, you will see why their decision makes complete sense. Let's go back to Milan, because that is where everything shifted. The 2026 Winter Olympics were supposed to be the culmination of everything Madison and Evan had been building toward. They were 3-time reigning world champions, 7-time national champions, the most technically consistent ice dance team America had ever produced. And they came into those games not just as individuals chasing gold, but as a married couple, having tied the knot in Hawaii in 2024, skating their first Olympic season together as husband and wife. The weight of that alone is something most people cannot fully grasp. Every program they skated in Milan carried a different kind of meaning. They were not just athletes performing routines. They were two people telling the story of their entire lives through movement on ice. Their free dance was set to a haunting orchestral version of Paint It Black from the Westworld soundtrack. And if you watched it live, you already know that what they put on the ice that night was genuinely extraordinary. It was cinematic. It was emotionally devastating in the best possible way. It was the kind of skating that makes you forget you are watching a sport and makes you feel like you are watching something closer to art. And when they finished, when the music stopped and the crowd erupted, there was this collective feeling in that arena that something historic had just happened. Then the scores came up. Silver. They lost the gold to the French team of Alex and Guillaume Serron by 1 point and 43 hundredths. On paper, that sounds like a tight, competitive result. In reality, it was anything but. When the detailed judging breakdown was released, the picture it painted was deeply uncomfortable. 5 out of 9 judges had Madison and Evan in first place. 5 out of 9. The majority of the panel believed they were the best team on that ice. But one judge, a French judge named Jezebel Dubois, submitted scores so dramatically skewed in favor of the French team that they single-handedly flipped the result. She awarded Alex and Guillaume scores that were nearly 8 points higher than what she gave Madison and Evan. 8 points. In a sport where margins of 1 or 2 points are considered significant, that kind of gap from a single judge is not just unusual. It is the kind of thing that makes people stop and stare at the numbers in disbelief. And here is where it gets even harder to accept. During the French team's free dance, Guillaume Serron visibly stumbled in a twizzle sequence. That is not subjective commentary. It was visible to everyone watching. Twizzle errors in ice dance are supposed to result in mandatory deductions. They are one of the most technically scrutinized elements in the entire discipline. But in Dubois' scoring, that stumble simply did not seem to exist. The deduction that should have come never materialized, at least not under her pen. Madison handled the aftermath with the kind of composure that only comes from years of discipline. She was gracious in interviews. She congratulated the French team, but within days, she was publicly calling for greater transparency in the judging process. And that is when you could feel the shift. That was not the statement of someone planning to keep grinding through the system. That was the statement of someone who had finally grown tired of a game where the outcome can hinge not on what you do on the ice, but on who is sitting at the judge's table. Now consider the physical reality of what Madison and Evan actually endured in Milan. Because of their role as the anchors of Team USA, they did not just compete once or twice. They performed 4 times in 6 days. 2 programs for the team event that helped secure America's first Olympic team gold in ice dance history, and then 2 more for the individual competition. 4 performances at Olympic intensity in 6 days at the ages of 33 and nearly 37. That is not just physically demanding. That is the kind of effort that leaves a mark on your body in ways that take months to fully feel. By the time they finished the Westworld free dance, they were running on something beyond training and preparation. They were running on the pure accumulated weight of 15 years, and they both knew it. In their official statement regarding Prague, Evan used a phrase that anyone who has ever loved something deeply will immediately recognize. He said they left it all on the ice in Milan. 7 words. And in the context of athletic retirement, those 7 words carry an enormous amount of meaning. It is the language of completion. It is what people say when they have reached the moment they were always building toward. And they know in their bones that they have nothing left to prove. That does not mean the fire is gone. It means the fire finally found its purpose and burned exactly the way it was supposed to. A few weeks later, on March 12th, Madison and Evan appeared on Live with Kelly and Mark, and the retirement conversation moved from subtext to text. Fans were desperate for a clear answer. Are you done? Are you coming back? What happens next? And what they got instead was something more honest than a simple yes or no. Evan was careful with his words but firm in their direction. He said they were not ready to make a formal retirement announcement, but that there were other opportunities they wanted to pursue while the momentum was still strong. And Madison, who has always been the more expressive of the two in public settings, lit up when she talked about those opportunities. She mentioned Dancing with the Stars. She joked about trading her skates for ballroom shoes. And the way she said it did not sound like a passing thought. It sounded like someone who had already started mentally making that transition and was genuinely excited about where it was leading. This matters more than it might seem on the surface. What Madison and Evan are doing right now is not retreating. It is pivoting. There is a well-worn path in elite figure skating where the most talented athletes finish their competitive careers and then quietly disappear into coaching or judging, occasionally resurfacing for a nostalgia tour. Madison and Evan are not following that path. They are following something closer to the blueprint that athletes like Adam Rippon helped write, where the transition out of competitive skating becomes a launch pad into mainstream entertainment and genuine cultural visibility. The 2026 Stars on Ice Tour confirms this. They will be headlining. They will be performing. They will be in front of live audiences every night, receiving the kind of immediate, unfiltered human reaction that no judging panel can replicate or take away. There is something deeply poetic about that choice. After an Olympic cycle that ended with a silver medal that most of the panel believed should have been gold, they are choosing to perform for crowds who will never subtract a single point. They are choosing arenas full of people who are there simply because they want to watch Madison Chock and Evan Bates skate. And that kind of validation, the kind that comes directly from human connection rather than from numbers on a scoreboard, might actually be the most fitting ending to a career that was always about more than medals. While all of this is unfolding, the immediate practical consequence is that Team USA is heading to the World Championships in Prague without its captain. Caroline Green and Michael Parsons will represent the country at the O2 Arena, and they are genuinely talented. Nobody is dismissing what they bring to the ice, but there is a difference between being talented and being the kind of team that changes the entire aesthetic of a competition just by walking into the building. Madison and Evan did that. For over a decade, they did not just compete in ice dance. They redefined what ice dance could look like. They moved the discipline away from its rigid, ballroom on ice traditions and pushed it towards something that felt genuinely cinematic. The Egyptian Snake Program, the Alien Routine, and finally, Westworld. Each one of those was not just a skating program. It was a statement about what the sport was capable of being. Prague will be the first major international competition in over a decade where the post-Chock era officially begins, and the younger American teams will have to find a way to carry that creative legacy forward without the people who built it. That is a real and significant challenge, and it is going to take time. The U.S. dynasty in ice dance is not over. but it is currently in a period of transition that will test whether the next generation can create their own identity rather than simply trying to imitate the one that came before. What Madison Chock and Evan Bates built over 15 years is not something that can be easily summarized. 7 national titles, 3 world championships, 2 Olympic team gold medals. They absorbed the heartbreak of a stumble in Pyeongchang in 2018. They processed the 4th place result in Beijing in 2022. They came back every single time. Not because they were chasing redemption, but because they genuinely believed they still had something left to say on the ice. And in Milan, they finally said it. Whether or not they ever formally announce a retirement, the story of their competitive career is already complete. And it is one of the most compelling stories the sport has ever produced. In the end, the 1.43 points that separated them from individual Olympic gold are ultimately the least interesting part of the entire narrative. Yes, what happened in that judging breakdown was deeply troubling, and the skating community has every right to keep asking hard questions about transparency and accountability in the scoring system. But Madison and Evan have already made clear through their actions that they are not going to let that number define them. They skated a winning program. The majority of the judges knew it. The crowd knew it. They knew it. And they are carrying that knowledge with them into everything that comes next. The ballroom shoes, the sold-out tour nights, the television appearances, and whatever chapter comes after that. Because when you have spent 15 years building something real with the person you love, and you stand on the ice in front of the entire world and give every single thing you have, no panel of judges gets to decide whether that was enough. Madison Chock and Evan Bates already know the answer to that question, and they are holding hands while they write whatever comes next.